Anyway, look, um, good morning and thanks for joining Business Drivers' first forum at 26 on leveraging AI for business profit and growth without additional resources. This particularly focuses, as I said, on leveraging AI. Very rapidly in today's business world, it's becoming apparent that if you're not leveraging AI, somebody else will be using AI and gaining a competitive advantage over you. So, firstly, Peter Selby will introduce a framework, and Jan, who is our resident AI expert, will pick up on the AI technology part of the presentation. So over to you, Peter.
Okay, thanks, and good morning, everybody. My name's Peter Selby. I'm the CEO of Business Drivers, and our business gets involved in a lot of, as the name suggests, working on the drivers for businesses, both small and large, um, really around strategic growth, I guess, and profit growth. And in more recent times, that has definitely encompassed AI just as a tool to assist in business process efficiency in one form or another. So we're going to give you some live examples today and just some of the observations that we've seen in recent times about some of the pitfalls with AI and some of the things that help. Um, and so I'll take you through that. If you've got any questions, please ask. You can always dump your questions into chat if you like, and we'll catch them at the end or catch them as we go. We'll try and make it as interactive as possible. The more questions you ask, the more you'll get out of it. But it's really just sharing our observations of applying AI into different business situations in recent times. So the real challenge around implementing AI is organizations tend, from our observations, tend to get caught between the sort of two extremes of completely automating something or having complete resistance against AI because teams or people feel threatened, um, especially if the mantra behind this is to take costs out by removing hits. It doesn't tend to be a good environment for AI. Um, the projects that fail really just ignore that human element, and it's really critical. There's so much more a team can achieve by using some of these tools as part of the day-to-day process. But if the focus is all around automation for the sake of removing people, then the whole thing comes up against a lot of resistance, understandably, and the projects tend to fail. And we see AI in business improvement is the modern version of what used to be lean and other things like it. And those projects were no different. If they weren't driven by the people in the business and embraced by the people in business, they failed. And businesses would either go back to their original processes and systems, or they would run even worse than they did before they tried to drive improvement. Um, so the missing piece right now from what we see out there is really understanding that gaining something, an advantage in a sustainable way, is about AI and human collaboration. And where we see projects going in where that is the case, they tend to be extremely successful. The projects tend to be self-driving, much less cost to implement them, and the improved results tend to be a lot more sustainable. Um, So if you think about that from a landscape perspective, if you think about where AI is very good, where humans are very good, you know, the sort of zone, the AI zone, for want of a better term, where automation really does add a lot of value is anywhere where you've got sort of data processing analysis going on that's repetitive. There's high volume, um, pattern recognition, pattern in data, pattern in trends, um, initiating research and information gathering, and routine task automation. AI is simply brilliant at all that stuff. Um, and it tends to be teams that are involved in that type of work can add a lot more higher value if they're not doing the repetitive tasks that a machine could do for them. If you think about the human zone, where are humans irreplaceable? If you think about complex strategies and patterns through strategies and decision making that comes from that, that's really an AI repetitive process really would struggle with that. Anything that requires any sort of emotional intelligence and trying to think about how others are going to think or feel about a situation or a service, that's definitely the domain of humans. Um, Creative problem solving, AI is not that creative at the end of the day. It follows a pattern. Um, if you want something that's creative and completely out of the box in the thinking, then you really need a human being to do that. And relationship building and stakeholder management. Stakeholder management, you'll see later on, you can get AI involved in that. But if you think about relationship building, that's all about trust, and trust comes from human interaction. So these areas are definitely deep in the human space. And if you try and do the stuff that I've just talked about with AI, it generally comes unstuck, or you drive a lot of mistrust into the business and you're trying to get a machine to do something that it's really not suited to do. Where the value comes and where the kind of magic happens, if you like, is in the hybrid zone here on the right, where AI is kind of amplifying what humans are doing. And if you build AI knowledge bases that people can use into business process, building unique IP, protecting IP even, but certainly building a process that is repeatable, but has taken human knowledge to build, and you might be leveraging AI to run it, or you might be leveraging AI to do the parts of that process that are repetitive, then you really see teams' performance lift. Intelligent research that humans curate and contextualize, but AI does the searching. Um, that's really common and particularly useful in marketing, and you'll see some examples of that in the coming slides. But if you think about that initial searching for information, AI is very good at pulling all that together, but it does need contextualizing if it's going to be engaging. It's very difficult to have um, engaging content or engaging material if it's had no human input. And Lord knows we've all seen by now zillions of AI posts on LinkedIn and places that really are quite obviously AI formulated. Um, if you think about insights that, data informed insights that can then be transferred into some sort of business strategy, again, that's a great way of applying the data pattern recognition out of AI and then applying human insights over that to build a strategy or a competitive edge in business. So, again, where we see this work really well, for instance, could be an executive team that's trying to get a competitive edge in the market and is using AI to do a lot of the source information to build that strategy, or it could be a sales team looking to get an edge in the market, or improve their customer interaction or their digital marketing approach, or whatever it may be. Again, definitely not trying to replace people in sales teams or management teams or operational teams. It's about really enhancing what those teams are doing. Um, so if we then think about, and look, I guess the punchline at the bottom here, the future really isn't about humans versus AI. And that is the most common thing we're seeing at the moment. It's either this or it's that, and it comes up a lot against a lot of resistance, rightly so. But really what we're seeing is the future is all about humans directing and leveraging AI in business. And that's where we're seeing the best results by far. And that, by the way, can be in small businesses and very large businesses. Um, Makes no difference really. And before AI, in the times of more traditional business improvement, that was exactly the same. So nothing's really changed apart from the technology that's available now that can move things quickly and far more cost effectively. Um, so here's an example, and we'll go into a bit more detail about this, but a very common area where people are getting a competitive edge is applying AI to grow top line revenue streams. And there's various different ways to do that. Um, but certainly, if you think about marketing, sales process, and conversion, and all the stuff that goes with it, you can definitely apply AI to that. Um, as in league with the people that are already doing that, you can get some great results. And I might add, you can get a lot more market interaction for the same amount of human resource, and also release those people to do much higher value adding activities on a day-to-day basis. So, if you think about building a market presence and building the authority around that, thought leadership and industry expertise, visibility to stay top of mind, so outreach, educational emails, strategic content, all that sort of stuff, develop consistency in a pipeline and have a systematic approach, and even the conversion to sales part of the whole process, you can have AI interact with some of that. Obviously, people buy from people at the end of the day, but there's a lot of process through there that can be streamlined and automated to increase the volume or the quality of the approach. Um, if you think about AI enhanced pipeline management, for instance, things like follow-ups and reminders, stopping leads leaking through the cracks, really, really common. And this is very time-consuming stuff. And the reason why a lot of the time follow-ups and reminders don't happen is people simply don't have the time to do that on top of everything else they're doing to increase sales activity. And those follow-ups can be totally automated and a lot more consistent as a result. Reactivating dormant leads. So there's already a lot of cost that is sunk into leads that, for whatever reason at the time didn't convert. Most commonly is because the time's just not right. It's not a big enough priority at the time, or there's too many other things going on. But the solution itself is very applicable. It's just the timing needs to be right. Therefore, reactivating and going back and following up on those conversations often bears fruit. Again, often doesn't happen because it's a time-consuming exercise. People forget the conversations that have happened. They're talking to new people. The sales team's already stressed, or the owner of the business is flat out, whatever it may be. And a lot of these dormant leads stay dormant forever because they're never revisited. You can build a whole process around that, automate it, re-trigger conversations that you can then, the human element can take over. Same with customer feedback loops, keeping pulse loops on the customers, uncovering any problems there may have been with service or product delivery, and making sure that feeds back into the sales team or the management team or the operations team or whatever it may be. Again, a lot of that tends to fall over because of time constraints. People just don't have time. They miss things. The customer then feels like they're not being heard. And it's not through lack of care of the customers. It tends to be time compression that causes these problems. So again, a whole process can be set up around that. And some significant results can come in quite a short period of time by just having a process around this. So look, I don't know if there's any questions at this point, Bede, or whether we can just put them into the chat for later. But I really was just trying to show the context of this today. At this point, I'll hand you over to our resident digital expert, Jan, who does this stuff all the time and applies AI into this world, is going to give you some real life examples of what this can look like. some examples of impacts on businesses from applying this sort of stuff from the perspective of top line growth. So obviously, the dimension we're looking at the moment is marketing and sales, but any operational, any business dimension you want to look at, you could apply an AI and human enhanced process. We're just picking sales and marketing simply because right now, from our observations, this tends to be the most common areas that people are using AI to try and gain an advantage in the market. Without any feedback, I'm hoping all that made sense. Um, I will just stop sharing this and hand over to Jan.
Uh, Jana, if you could share the next slide, please, Peter. We're still.
Oh, hang on. Okay, sorry. Let me do that. I will go back in there. Okie dokie. Can everybody see that? Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jan Rautenbach. Here's some examples of actual specific examples of what Peter talked about just now. And we'll also show you a little demo shortly. So in terms of AI-enhanced pipeline management, what's really great is that you could use AI to automatically follow up on leads almost immediately, what we call speed to lead. So for example, if someone is running ads and people are filling in an ad late at night or any time of the day, it could be after hours, that lead can immediately be followed up and qualified. The important thing is it can be qualified through SMS or WhatsApp or email. And the AI can start an intelligent conversation. We'll show you an example just now where the right questions can be answered to respectfully and really intelligently get the whether the person qualifies, and then that can be then actioned for the salespeople to follow up the right leads first. Because typically what happens is they come in the next day and they start phoning and responding to leads. And these leads could come from ads, like I said, or from the website or wherever, or LinkedIn or wherever. And if they've phoned someone once or twice, they often, and they can't get hold of them, people don't tend not to answer the phone anymore if it's a strange number, then that just stops and that very quickly becomes a dead lead. And a lot of money has been spent on that. So this is where AI can do really smart things. It can even do voice. Then if there are old leads, AI can be used to reactivate them. These would be dormant leads. You've already spent a lot of money on getting those leads. And again, SMS and AI can be used to kind of resurrect them and get them, qualify them, and get a salesperson or whoever to follow that up. The other really interesting aspect is customer feedback loops. So what often happens, especially if a service or product is delivered through contractors or through employees, the owner or management doesn't often have direct feedback as to how that went. They would get feedback if the person is really unhappy, sure. But there's often times when the person is, it wasn't like the greatest service, but it's not enough to give a bad review over or to actually complain. They'll just quietly go somewhere else. And this is really gold, is to try and figure out where things went wrong and fix that. Because if you don't know, you can't fix it, right? And I'll show you a demo just now how this can be used, and it's really valuable because you can't fix things you don't know is broken. The other area where AI is really, really good at is content creation. So what we can do is we can train the AI on the entire business, the context, tonality. That is done by uploading the website into the training of AI, uploading documents, brochures, your ideal customer profile, your ideal customer audience, all of that. And the AI can use that to generate content automatically. We still recommend that you obviously get people to check that. But the point is, like 90% of the work is done by AI, and 10 to 20% is then done to make sure it's correct. And AI can also help with choosing topics that are topical. The other aspect that's really important is if people use search engine optimization, increasingly those searches are now not necessarily done on search engines anymore, but actually inside AI chats like ChatGPT or Google Gemini or wherever. And the AI answers lead people directly to the actual solution online, where they can go and get more information about it, register to become a lead, or actually buy through a e-commerce site. So that is where AI can help. It can analyze these search opportunities and create the content in the correct way for it to come up in AI searches and search engine optimization in general. Another area where productivity can be gained enormously is in customer service, where again you can train AI in your policies, procedures, how to answer questions, all of that, and that can be uploaded in a Q&A bot, either on a website or within a portal, and the AI can actually answer those questions. Again, it's not going to do everything, but if it does 80 to 90% of the work, that's a massive load off people, and then people can concentrate on those issues which are unusual, where the AI cannot answer the questions, or where the AI can pick up there's intent to buy, and that can then be transferred to the right person to actually lead that person into a sale. So those are some examples. I'll give you a quick demo. If you can stop sharing, please, Peter. Right. Can you see here? I've got an imaginary company called Steel Be Right Fabrications. It's a feedback loop. Bob has recently bought a custom U tray installation from Steel Be Right Fabrications, and we are now sending an SMS to Bob to find out what he feels about his recent purchase. So this is a demo screen that simulates a conversation by SMS. This is a very useful thing that we've created whereby before we let this loose on sending SMSs, we can actually simulate conversations and see what transpires, especially when we answer unexpected answers. So Bob was going to say yes or no whether he's the person. So he might say something like, "That's me." He might not say yes or no. And then Jennifer, who's representing the AI bot, would say, "Great, thanks for confirming. What's your favorite thing about steel fabrication? What's about the steel fabrication you received?" So, well, let's say Bob's not very happy. So he'd say something like, it, nothing great. Actually, it was pretty crappy. Pardon the conversation there, the language, but that's what somebody might say if they're not happy. So then Jennifer responds, "Could you share what specifically didn't meet your expectations?" So we'd say something like, "It wasn't up to spec like I wanted, and your guy was pretty rude." Yeah. He tried to complain, but was ignored. So then Jennifer says, "I apologize for your experience. Let me get all this feedback over to management." So that has now been intercepted and a problem's been recognized, and now that can be acted on by management. Okay. So we'll do another quick one. So this is a new conversation. So let's say yes. And now we're going to, Bob's going to be really happy with this. He's really happy with it. How would you rate it? Now we want to get this person to try and do a review for us. It could be Google, it could be any review site. So now we want to know how happy he is. So he'll say 5. And then we say, "That's fantastic to hear. Would you be open to leaving us a Google review?" So we're just trying to encourage him to do this. It's a powerful way to support our business. It'll just take 20 seconds. So we're asking before we send the link. And Bob will say, "Sure." And then we send the link. And that's it. So those are 2 examples of a customer feedback loop, one where someone is really happy and one where they're not so happy.
I guess the important point there, Jan, too, is you haven't pre-planned that. You've kind of made that up as you've gone along. So it proves that the
Correct.
bot can kind of react to anything, you know?
Right. So can you share again, Peter? And we
Yeah,
can
sure.
go.
Let me just get that back up. By the way, there's a Q&A section to ask questions in. I said it was in chat, but it looks like chat's deactivated. It's actually, you go into the Q&A section just if people have questions. We've picked up a couple that we'll answer at the end here. Back to you, Jan. Sorry.
Okay. So here's some examples of real world applications and we've selected a few that are really, really different. They're not all in marketing and some of them are really pretty interesting. The first one is where a client was helped who does energy compliance. He works with some large companies, and we automated compliance research and energy calculations for enterprise consulting. And what was really critical here was that the data had to be secured. The data couldn't be shared with AI platforms like OpenAI, Claude, and so on. It had to be its own. So we had to create a downloadable language model within a secure environment so that nothing, because this is really critically important information, we didn't want to share it with anybody. So the result was 83% faster report generation. That's where AI is really, really good. And he was able to scale from 20 to 35 clients, increase earning capacity by 75% without additional staff. The next one is using voice AI for a specialist healthcare for veterans. So this AI was well trained on handling and trying to figure out if veterans were eligible for claiming claims from the Department of Defense. It went through a verification process to try and qualify them, made appointments, and was able to escalate if it discovered there's a crisis situation, hand it over to a human immediately. So the results were 40% less admin workload, 65% faster call handling, $450,000 in annual savings, and 50% fewer missed appointments, which is massive. And that is through the automated follow-up. It's just a simple thing of following up automatically, but also making sure that those people that had the appointments were qualified. An interesting transcription and meeting intelligence service where we were accurately able to transcribe and identify speakers. Now, there's a lot of standard transcription tools already on the market, but this client had thousands of conversations and he wanted to automatically identify speakers between conversations, which we couldn't find a standard tool for. So we had to create this. And that was like actually $200,000 in annual savings and resources. The other was a interesting aspect where a client did venture capital intelligence research. So we automatically extracted and analyzed podcast conversations and created data from this and created a queryable knowledge base on startups and capital raising. The repository replaced a lot of manual cross-referencing, and it resulted in $150,000 annual savings. The next one is a more marketing and sales related one, where a client was running a lot of ads. They were really successful in their Facebook ads. The problem was that the development that the client was doing pre-sales on was not approved yet. So he was more looking for people who wanted to pre-buy a lot from an investment point of view, rather than somebody wanting to have a normal purchase where they would have a mortgage bond or mortgage loan on it. So he couldn't sell it on that basis. So he had to have pre-sale cash sales. This was able to do that qualification, and he had 3 conversions in 2 months, or $550,000 worth of sales, which is really, and that saved a lot of phone calls, because, like I say, a lot of these people, they didn't really read the ads, and they thought they were buying normal properties. The last one is financial data extraction for commercial lenders. So this is where an experiment was run where we were able to quickly analyze 3 years worth of financial statements and tax records for commercial loans and get it credit ready, an analysis that's already credit ready in the exact format managers needed to make lending decisions. And this was done in a few seconds, whereas normally it took them hours and hours to analyze those 3 years of financial information. So these are
What's
some
interesting
real.
in that last example, and very much highlights typical business improvement, even though the results are kind of staggeringly more efficient than their current processes, in that particular case, the client decided not to proceed at that time by using that tool. I'm sure they will at some point in the future, but there's 2 sides to this battle. It's not just about being able to build processes and systems that are can enhance performance or set cost savings. They do need to be embraced by the organization as a whole, and often there can be a barrier to that happening, or at least it's in a pile of other priorities that are going on, and it might not always happen as fast as you'd like, but certainly the results for these stuff speak for themselves, but it's an interesting process getting people to have buy-in in an organization for technology, and make sure that people aren't threatened by it, and it can liberate performance rather than, I guess, frighten people.
Okay, so there's, I think, one. Matt Borg wanted to ask a question, but the chat wasn't disabled. If you want to post it, please, Matt. James Hermans, how would the customer follow up using AI differ from using a CRM such as Keep with its own automated email follow-ups? Right, so if I understand that correctly, almost every CRM has a way of automatically following up emails, within the CRM, but they're normally sort of more mechanical follow-ups. And so in a case like if you wanted to do follow-ups where there's a conversation flow between the email that you're sending and the email you receive back, and that the AI then formulates an answer. Normally with these, where we're trying to get responses from leads, we're trying to push those into a direction of either qualifying it or into a point where we can hand it over to someone that can actually engage properly with the client. And in that process, you can actually, even if you're using standard CRMs, most software these days can integrate with other systems and other products through a process called APIs, or application program interfaces. An example would be Zapier, where you can link products together, and then you have processes in between them. And what would happen in this case, if I'm understanding your question correctly, is that you would build in an AI flow in between where the AI would actually draft the email response and keep or whatever CRM would then send that response.
So that email response would be specific for that conversation rather than a set
Correct.
of. I mean, the thing is with automated CRM responses is they are a set of pre-written emails that get sent out in blocks, and
Yeah.
whether it's Keep or HubSpot or whatever. Um, the point of introducing AI into all that process is you can then have intelligent, relevant conversations to that particular situation rather than a standardized customer message. Um,
Correct.
and you could flick over to SMS and all sorts of other things in the middle, which of
Yeah.
course a CRM system just can't do.
Yeah. So you wouldn't necessarily need to change your CRM system. What we propose is more an aspect of what are you using already. Don't throw anything out or throw it away. Just add processes to it that can integrate with what you have. Um, that means less disruption because everybody is already used to using whatever software you're using. It involves less disruption, but just adding intelligence to what you already got, which means less cost, more cost effective. I hope I answered that. Ronnie says, the challenge I see is every SMB knows they need to do something in AI. The challenge is they don't know the breadth of what AI can do for them. Yeah, once they understand the art of the possible, the next challenge tends to be the identification of true use cases and determining which ones are a priority. We've addressed these two items, and I would love to chat with you guys to see. Yeah, 100%. So that's exactly the reason why we are having this kind of workshop is to show what is possible, and we try to choose a huge variation of use cases here that's not in one specific area to just show what is possible and get people thinking of how that could work in their business and what they could do. Thanks, Ronnie.
So look, from a high level perspective, the projects that we've been involved in the last few 2 or 3 years, we definitely see the better results come from implementing AI alongside people and not trying to replace people, and certainly freeing up people from repetitive tasks that AI can do very well and freeing them up to add a lot more value into the process. Also, I guess as a steer, we're seeing, I don't know what the percentage would be, but certainly well over 50% of projects that are using AI well are using it to generate top line sales more than anything else in business. Although, as you've seen from this, you can use it in just about any part of business you like. So we are definitely seeing more companies driving, trying to get a market edge at the top line than anywhere else. So look, just from if there's anybody that's interested in anything we've talked about here or would like to know more, just reach out. There's a couple of emails you can reach me or Jan, or reach out by LinkedIn or whatever's most convenient. Always happy to have a chat with you and help brainstorm any ideas you might be working with. And if we can help in any way, that's great. But there is a lot you can do with AI. It's just, as Ronnie quite rightly said, understanding what you can do and how to apply that. So look, I hope this information has been useful for people. We've taken a very small sort of sample size of stuff that we're involved in, just to try and, as Jan said, give you the breadth across a multitude of things. And we've certainly tried to give it a bit of a sales focus for you, but this can be applied anywhere. Over to you, Pete.
Righto. Look, a thought that occurs to me is that I was there when PCs were first introduced into business. And that was a fairly major step. And it was a major change when we ended up with personal PCs. How big a change do you think AI is eventually going to, like, we're talking about what you're doing currently, but where do you see it going in the future? And that's both to Peter and Jan.
Um, I would have thought it. Jan's probably a better person to answer this, but I would have thought the impact would be as significant overall as when computing was brought into business in the first place. And unfortunately, I'm old enough to remember that too. Um, and certainly the impact when you look back at that and you had sort of computers and the internet all happening at once, the impact wasn't immediate. Businesses carried on with a lot of underlying process that was there before the use of computers, just because changing changing perceptions, thinking, and processes to understand where it can be used takes time. But of course, once it's adopted, you never go back. And the more technology is applied, the more it's kind of riveted into processes. And of course, you can't imagine a business now without using computers and PCs and emails and all that sort of stuff. But the adoption was quite slow, but much more, a lot more obvious about where it would be used, I guess. I mean, I'd hand over to you at this point, Jan, but I'd have thought AI's contextually a lot more difficult, but I'd have thought similar level of impact.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine where it's not going to end anyway, but it's hard to imagine exactly where it's going to go and exactly what influences it'll have on all of us. It's going to have massive influences. I think it'll be baked into everything almost. It's already started with phones. It it's in a way it's quite exciting. In another way, it's quite could be quite scary. Um, I I I just remember, there was a time when I used to remember phone numbers, and then we had mobile phones, and now I can't remember numbers anymore. I used to remember a phone number the second or third time I dialed it, and I used to remember all my clients' phone numbers. Now you don't do that. And so maybe it's going to make us more dumb. I don't know.
Or just change what we focus on, maybe.
Yeah, it'll change what we focus. I think there's going to be a lot of disruption in jobs. There already has in the big tech companies, but I think it's going to make drudgery jobs disappear, and people would really need to refocus on reskilling some of their skills, I think, so that what they do does become more strategic, and input from a high level, than in the past. So I think certain functions um, like what tradies do, for example, that'll never go away. Um, so you know, some job functions um, won't disappear, but I think white collar work um, has a lot of threat, depending on what it is. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I was born BC before computers, so all this is a little bit surreal for me. But look, thank you very much, Peter and Jan, for kicking off Business Driver's first future forum for 2026. And thank you for all the participants that joined us. this will be recorded and you will be sent a link to the recording. So thank you very much. And
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks.